And my computer is just a little bit slow, but that's okay. We
Yes.
like turtles.
That's okay.
I'm so tickled we finally get to do this. I had imagined this for several days, and that's several days, several weeks already. Okay, back to you. Okay, we're good to go. Good evening, everyone. Hey, it's like I said, the one and only one, Kyle Butler, is in the house. So thank you so much. And I would like for you to introduce yourself, but before you do that, I wanted to share this. So a couple years ago, I was in a very dire situation, challenging, and I actually reached out to you. I'm like, what are my chances? He probably says, you're too much of a peon, but you actually allowed me to reach out to you. You accepted it and were there for me. And Kyle, I just want to thank you for that because that meant a lot to me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're
And I
really
feel like
welcome.
you're doing that every day too, with your posts that you're putting out there. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's always timely. So
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit about yourself, all you want to share, and we'll go from there with the conversation. Is that okay?
Yes, perfect. Well, my name is Kyle Butler, and I'm just, you know, I'm just a normal human being who, um, in my personal life, I don't have a whole lot of personal details to tell. I'm not married. I don't have children, so I can't go down that pathway right now. Talk about those things. I haven't written a book. I don't really feel like I've done anything really significant, as far as, oh, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. I was a pastor for many years, so in the Christian circles of the world, that could be considered significant. And I guess at the time when I was pastoring, it was significant in a way because the aura that comes along with it. But I never felt that it was significant as far as look at me, I'm the man, all eyes on me. Never felt that way. As a matter of fact, I shied away from the title and the acclaim of it all. Most people who knew me didn't know I was a pastor unless you went to my church, and that's the honest truth about that matter. So I'm just a normal everyday person who cares a lot about humanity, who believes that people matter, and that we have a responsibility to ourselves and to humanity to try to be the best we can be for ourselves and for others. And that's really who I am and what I feel deep in my heart, and what I try to do on a day-to-day basis is just to try to be a kind person as much as possible whenever possible. It's not always easy, and I'm not a robot, but I'm optimistic, and I try to give every situation the benefit of the doubt. But the overwhelming scope of me as a person is just to try to help people. I guess that's who I am.
I like that. Yeah, that's because that's who we are. One thing I've noticed that you, Kyle, have shared a lot about loving ourselves, especially, with all your posts and stuff. So, do you want to talk about that? Is that on your heart or is it something more pressing?
Yeah, that's that was a it's I think it's a struggle for most people.
Hmm.
We are in an environment societally or religiously where where the focus is on loving ourselves. I grew up in a Christian environment that was very heavily induced with Christian doctrine, and it was deeply centered and surrounded by the idea that I don't matter. I need to get out the way. So it's very difficult to find and foster self-love when you believe that you don't matter, that, at the time, what I thought God was, when this God looked at me, all he saw was Jesus and didn't see me. So again, that fostered more that idea that you don't matter. So self-love, self-worth, self-appreciation, self-value, those things were not part of my psyche and my mentality. Although from a from a very everyday perspective, yeah, if you would have asked me, do I love myself? I would have said, yeah, I love myself. Absolutely. Of course I love myself. But that would have just been lip service because after I deconstructed and after I went on a journey of healing, I realized just how much I did not love myself and how I did not value myself and how I had abandoned me to follow a pathway that I never wanted and didn't fit me. And so I began to slowly snatch that back away and turn the light on myself. And I tried to voice this sense of knowing in a way where I want people to know that it takes a certain level of selfishness to self-love, and that shouldn't be deemed as wrong or bad. Because even when we go on an airplane, we go on a flight, I mean, they tell you, hey, if there's a situation and the oxygen masks fall or become present during the flight, put yours on first. And you might think as a parent, no, let me take care of my child first. Let me make sure everyone else is okay and put me last. But they tell you that for a reason, because if you pass out, then you're not there to put them on for your children.
I like that. Yeah.
So there is tremendous value to self-love and self-worth and self-appreciation, self-value, to where you can do it to the fullness that you need it for yourself, but you don't have to abandon others in the process. And I think that's the balance, hopefully, that I'm finding and also helping other people perhaps find.
I like that because that's been my inspiration because, I would have said the same thing. I love myself. I'm good to go.
Right.
But heck, I was like,
Yeah.
some of the stuff you wrote, I'm like, okay, and today I will admit, I still don't think that I love myself on a daily basis.
Mhm.
I'm very critical, especially when I look in the mirror, like, duh, and boy, that's, the invitation is there,
Yes,
and I can only serve others as much as I love myself.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And and another aspect of when I realized I really didn't love myself was because it was so hard for me to receive praise from others. Because what I saw in the mirror, I didn't see what other people saw. And so I would get compliments. Oh, you're so handsome. You're so this, you're so that. And I would hear them. And maybe the same with you. People tell you, oh, you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. You hear it, but you don't hear it because it doesn't penetrate. It's only for that moment. You don't, it doesn't capture you the way that it should, you know? And even if you didn't hear it from others, if you ventured into the mirror and would want to call yourself beautiful or handsome or gorgeous or whatever those words are, you would struggle with hearing that. So I knew that was an area that I really needed to improve on because I was walking through life with such a blindness about the beauty of who I am. And that can be very tough because in this environment we live in called life, people would tell you things about yourself that they deem to be unpleasant, and those seem to stick a lot more than the words of others. I was a few years ago writing about my dark skin and how it was really tough. I got bullied a lot for being so dark skinned in my community. And one of my Facebook friends messaged me and told me how much my courage for talking about these things is helping them. And she said, and I thought this young lady was beautiful. She said, I've been dealing with this, and I think I'm so ugly because one day when I was in grade school, another schoolmate walked up to me and said, "You have an ugly nose." And she said, up until that point, I didn't know. But after that point,
right.
you know, after that point, she was never the same. Every time she looked in the mirror, all she saw to her now was an ugly nose.
Right.
And she said, I would have never have known this about myself had someone not told me. And then of course, I'm thinking about myself and I'm in tears and I'm like, I wouldn't have known I was so dark skinned until someone told me I was doing fine.
Right.
I was
Exactly.
doing perfectly fine. But it's when we hear it, we take on that negative self-image, and those are so difficult to break away from. That's why self-love, self-worth, self-appreciation, self-value are so important in the journey to that, because we get to bleed those things out more and more and more and really focus on who we really are and the beauty that we are.
Yeah. Yeah, let's dive into that because, we, like you said, because I was the same way, it was those negative emotion or thoughts that were said to me, I would carry them, but when somebody gave me a compliment, I would shove it down, like we were taught that, don't take any praise, so I would always excuse myself. But let's talk about what should we say instead? Like let's say somebody gives you a compliment, Kyle. What do you say now? And how did
Thank
you
you.
get there?
Yeah, thank you. I say,
Oops. I think we lost Kyle. Give him a couple minutes and he's back. There
I am,
you
I am so sorry. I coming through. I thought I hit cancel the call, but I'm having a technical difficulty moment. Sorry.
Uh, so,
Okay, are we still
okay.
still
Yeah,
good?
we're still
Oh,
recording. You're good. Yep.
yes. So it took me some time to get to a place where I can just say thank you. Now, I'll be honest, I still don't receive it to the fullness perhaps that I should. I still struggle with it, because the struggle with it has been longer than the acceptance. So, it's still sometimes a struggle, but I do receive it better, at least outwardly. Like, thank you, and I tell you another little quick story about the challenge of this, right? So maybe 2 years ago, I was at a family event. My uncle was having his 60th birthday, and I was at this event, and we were all dressed up, and so it's a friendly environment. It's family and friends and things like that. And we were all taking pictures, and just camera snapping, and I'm looking at the pictures and like, oh man, it looks so terrible. Like, oh, it looks so terrible. And I was sitting down at the table, and all of a sudden I started thinking, that person's talking, laughing at you. That person's laughing at you. This person. And my mood went from this high to this incredible low. And I'm sitting there now, I want to cry. Now I feel like I want to leave. And it took me a couple of days to get out of that funk. And that's only because I was just so used to being picked on. And I guess subconsciously, I was trying to protect myself from this possibility. And even though no one was picking at me, no one was mocking me, no one was doing anything to me, it was a fun, loving environment. Everyone was saying, oh, you look so handsome, you look so nice, and this, that, and the other. I reverted back to this place. And it took me, and I think oh my goodness, her name, geez, oh wow. Uh, G. Um, oh goodness, I can't believe I can't think of her name right now.
I know you're trying too hard.
I'm trying too hard. Oh, not Dawn, not Connie. And I know her so well. Oh my goodness, it'll come to me.
Okay.
But she called me like the next day. And she says, "Hey Kyle, we haven't spoken in a while. You're on my mind." And I just unloaded. Like I started crying and wailing, as I'm telling her about what happened to me the night before. and in her lovingness and her kindness, she just embraced me in that moment over the phone and let me get it all out because I felt such pain, but I realized that it was just suppressed pain from all those years of not loving myself, all those years of just receiving the abuse, all those years of that problem. So I knew I still had a lot of work to do, and I kept going and kept going, and I gotta admit it's easier now to walk in this sense of self-appreciation for myself and to value myself in that way. But it is a challenge, especially if you've come from any environment of being bullied in the past or picked on or anything like that.
Yes, for sure. And isn't it crazy how our imagination can just go wild?
Yeah,
Because nothing was said. But again, it's in those dark moments where we get the breakthrough. So we have to go through those dark times to sometimes, like you said, I thought I had it all figured out, and then this comes up. Because I've had the same experience. I would say, oh yeah, I do love myself. And then something happens and I'm like, oh, and I would love to shove it under the carpet,
yeah,
but I'm also open enough. You know what? I'm going to feel through it. I'm going to
yes.
feel through
Yeah.
it. And thankfully that person called you at the right time.
Catherine
And
Toon, I got her name, Catherine Toon. It was Catherine
oh,
Toon.
yes, yeah,
She had called me in and, they said, hey, Kyle, you were on my mind. And I just felt like it was one of those moments where the universe was saying, I see you're hurting and I'm going to send you a safe voice. And I felt so much better after that. But again, it's just so remarkable when I think about it now, how I let myself get there. And it shows the power of the subconscious mind because I had gotten so scared to be in different environments as a kid for fear of being picked on. And I guess it just, because I was in this process of healing, I guess it just came to the surface that, hey, you need to visit this so this can heal as well.
yeah. Your story reminds me of one of mine. So I come from a family of 10 siblings. So there's a lot of us.
Wow.
And so we had to plan our own birthday parties if we wanted a birthday party, because mom didn't have time to do all 10 of us.
Yeah.
And so I planned my 11th birthday because my birthday is on the 11th. So that would make sense, right? And I invited all my girlfriends, and lo and behold, I saw them one day at school around the corner, and they were talking about me. They were saying, she thinks we would want to come to her birthday party, but we don't want to go. So let's all plan on not going. I tell you what, I have had so many healing opportunities through that now because that rejection went all the way to my adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you have said many times, this thing is hard. And I think we need to address that because people think it's a roller coaster and it's
Oh,
not.
no.
You look at that, I looked at that moment and, as many times as I said, it's okay, deep down inside, it hurt. I'm like, those girlfriends suck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we move on. So, Kyle, what would you like to talk about? I know I earlier you said let's just go with the flow, and I like that because I want to hear what's on your heart for today.
That's I
Is
guess,
that too broad?
yeah, I guess right now more than ever, I've been feeling this sense of vulnerability and emotional vulnerability. I think when I think about it from the concept of being a man and the stigma and the dogma and the concept and the mindset that we have to be strong, and that strength does not represent emotions, and it doesn't represent anything that is deemed weak. But we're human beings. So regardless of my gender or my skin color, I'm a human being. And in this construct of the human body, there are things called emotions and feelings. And I mean, we all have them and we all share them. And it's not something that is sparsed out to some and not sparsed out to others. We're in this human capacity, we all have them. And although it's become acceptable and deemed appropriate that women are more emotional and men are more stoic, that shouldn't be that way. Because I bypassed my emotional realm for so long that when I finally went to do the inner work and the inner healing and the shadow work, or whatever you want to call it, I had no idea how much bypassing I had done for so long, to the point I was crying every day for a year and a half. You know? And
Making up for lost time.
yeah, I just was crying all the time, but it was healing. It was therapeutic.
Hmm.
And so I think to men specifically, I want to say, listen, you're a human being above and beyond everything. And in your humanness, crying, emotions, feelings, hurt, pain, those things are part of this human experience. And we're not to shun them. We're not to hide away from them. We're not to pretend as if we have it all together and we're okay and we don't have to put on the mask of we're the strong one and nothing bothers us, because that's just not true. Things bother us and we hurt and we feel pain and we have emotions, and that's natural and that's normal. So I want to kind of appeal to men that it's okay, and I think I wrote something the other day that said it's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have moments where you're like, you know what, I don't feel right. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just want to be alone, or whatever those things are. It's okay. Even for us who are trying our best to always project positivity and encouragement and enthusiasm and this light to the world, it's okay to wake up sometime and then, you know what, I don't feel it. I don't have it. I need someone else's light today.
Right, right. So how many times did you hear the statement, big men or big boys don't cry?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had stopped crying. I programmed myself to stop crying at 8 years old.
Mm.
Because our family it seemed like we were always going through something, was always disappointment. And I remember at 8 years old, I'm saying, I'm not crying anymore.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's not a decision that 8-year-old boys should be making.
Exactly. Right.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's very young. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So good for you. And I agree. This message is so vital, so important, because now more than ever, like men have just as much right to their feelings as us girls do.
yes,
And, sometimes as girls will do the same thing, like, okay, we're a big girl, shove your emotions down or back or something like that. And, I always say, feel through them,
yeah,
walk through them, embrace them, because good will come out of it.
yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
part of the healing process. And I'm a better person today because I cry. I'm a kinder, softer, gentler person because I cry, and I'm not afraid to cry.
Mhm.
I've done a podcast talking about the journey of healing, talking about some of the experiences, and I'll well up with tears. It's start get teary eyed and try to hold back tears. And it's not a show. It's not an act. It's a natural progression as you're talking about it and you're feeling it in those moments. And I think that's healthy. I think that's
I,
necessary, you
yeah,
know.
I agree. Yes. Yeah. So let that message be loud and clear for everyone that's listening tonight, is just embrace that and be okay with crying, because like you said, more than ever, it's important.
Yeah.
So as we move along, do you want to share with us, how did you transition from being a pastor into where you're at today? Or is
I'm
it
in
too
public
long?
saying I should have
Before you
never been a
forgot?
pastor. And I don't say that from a perspective of because I was a bad pastor and I did all these horrible things. I say that because deep down inside myself, I knew I never wanted to be a pastor. But somewhere along my journey, I realized, or at least I thought I had no choice, because it was this idea that this is God's choice for you. And hey, listen, you either do what God wants you to do or else, you know? And I remember at 19, when I submitted to what I thought was my no choice option, um, let me just say it this way, I guess, when you feel as if you're in a position and there's a higher power over you, and this higher power you're terrified of. It's like the man who raised me wasn't my natural father, but he instilled a lot of fear in us and a lot of fear in me. And it was when you hear the door open, you get scared, and you know that for nothing less, you had better do what he says, or he's going to show you why you should have. And it's not going to be pleasant, you know. So, multiply that 100-fold when you're thinking about God, because I grew up in this environment where it was commonly said, if you don't do what God wants you to do, God will make you do it. And, you much rather do it freely than do it under the pressure of God making you or submitting your will or breaking your will. So, yeah, I should have never been a pastor, but I kind of submitted to this, what I believe with this call in my life. And I did it with sincerity, and I did it with my heart, and I did it with honesty and integrity and the best I could. I just, like any other endeavor in my life, I poured everything I had into it. But I was never really happy. I never felt fulfilled or content. And there were many other challenges that came along with it. And I think for me, once I went on this journey for about 8 years where I got so consumed with the word. So it was the word, a little bit of the word of faith, a little bit of the word of grace, that whole thing of, it's God's ultimate power. It's if I'm sick, by his stripes I'm healed, stand on the word, live in the word, that whole thing. Because I kind of had mediocre results so far in ministry. And I thought, okay, here's the problem. I've never fully trusted the word. I've never really fully trusted God in the word. So this is what's been missing. If God said it, if he framed the world with his words, and his words have power and all this kind of stuff, I thought, okay, this must be the missing link. God has looked at my life so far. He's looked at my ministry so far. He realizes I've never really trusted the word. I put a lot of dependency on me, so I need to turn all that over to God, to which I did for about 8 years. This incredibly insane, as I look at it now, dogmatic word experience I went to, and faith. And then I remember about 8 years after that, I was like, okay, it shouldn't take this long. it like how much faith does someone have to exhibit before God does something? Like, it's been 8 years of this, and I could tell stories of how dogmatic it was, how resolute I was, how determined, how unmoved I was, standing on the word, as they called it, right? And I just woke up one day and realized something's wrong here. And my first approach was either I'm doing something incredibly wrong or God is incredibly slow. And I wasn't yet ready to blame God, so I kept looking at myself. And you know how we do in that environment. We gaslight ourselves. When it's not working, it's our fault. When it's not working, we didn't pray enough, we didn't fast enough, we didn't trust enough, we're not humble enough, we still have sin in our life. We gaslight ourselves for all the failures of what we've put our faith into. So it was mostly gaslighting myself, but then but my reality was saying, but I don't know what else I could have done. I mean, then I started thinking about it from the human perspective. I don't have any children, but I started imagining if my son is really trying to impress me with his doings, and I said, do this, son, I want you to do this, and dad's going to be happy. And he's doing his best and trying, and I see it, I mean, I'm not going to keep moving the finish line further away. I'll be like, yeah, I'm so proud of you. You did it. Yeah, high five. Let me reward you now. And I'm thinking, well, that's simple, So it was that kind of stuff that really started to waken me up. And I started humanizing the stories. And it just started falling apart little by little by little. And And then I realized one day, you know what? I don't believe what I used to believe. I don't see any tangibility in it. I don't see any um, fruit that remains, as one of our dear friends says. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. Maybe others have, but I couldn't find it. So I'm also the kind of person, if I wake up and realize something isn't working, then I need to really examine it for myself. And I'm not here to tell other people that they shouldn't do what they feel good to them. I just know it didn't feel good to me anymore. You know, so I started to voice my opinion about the narratives and the beliefs, you know. And I don't have an answer as to if any of it's real, or if a God is real or God exists or not. I just know for me, I haven't been convinced. And faith wasn't enough for me anymore to just keep going. I needed something more tangible. And I feel like if it's important for me to believe in it, then it will let me be convinced. Like, it'll do it. And up until this point, it hasn't. So I'm going to stay over here because over here feels better for me. My life is better. It's more peaceful. It's more calmer. I don't have that burden and that stress of trying to prove or trying to do. I don't have any of that stuff anymore. I don't wake up and feel guilty or ashamed, or I missed the mark yesterday, or I feel so bad because I didn't pray. No, none of that. It's just I wake up every day now and I breathe the fresh air of life, and just today's a new day. Let's go. And that's it.
Yes. Yeah. So, Kyle, would you say, because more and more are awakening, they're starting to ask the questions just like you did, and then we did.
Mhm.
So, what is your advice to those people? Because I'm sure you've got backlash, loss of relationships.
Yeah.
So, what would you say toward that?
I followed me for the first
Okay,
time in my life. I followed myself
I like
because
that.
deep
Say
down
that again.
inside, yeah, I followed me. I followed
Yes.
me for the first
Yeah.
time in my life. Because if I'm honest, Lorraine, deep down inside me from the very beginning, I made that commitment as a 19-year-old. And I had been in church prior to that. I'd already, quote, given my life to Christ at 13. So the age of accountability, that whole thing, I'd already been baptized. I already had what, would be considered speaking in tongues. So I already had years of church experience, church life, Christianity. I already had that. So by 19, when I said, okay, you're getting everything, it never felt right. Never felt right. And that's my honest truth. So I should have paid attention to that a lot sooner. So that's what I mean by follow you. I think everyone knows. Everyone knows. Because none of this is instinctive to us. Belief in a God is not an instinctive thing, something that we're naturally, innately born with. So every bit of knowledge or information that we have, we've got it from influences around us. Someone's taught us. I grew up in a Christian home, so I was taught about God, and I was taught about Jesus, and I was taught about the Bible and all the characters, and I was taught it, and it was drilled in me over and over and over again to, it's like, ain't God good? Oh yeah, God is good. Don't you love God? Oh, I love God, and all these kind of things. But there was nothing instinctive about it. There was no waking up one day like, oh, yeah, for sure. I've always known this. No, it's been the opposite. I've always had questions. I've always felt something's not right. So that's what I mean by follow yourself. I believe everyone knows deep down inside of them. And perhaps if I were to use a Bible example here, even though I'd stay away from them altogether now, but maybe for those that are listening, and since you've posed it to them, perhaps if there's something symbolic or metaphorical or analytical about, or an analogy about it, rather, maybe that's where we can apply the Moses with the burning bush scenario, where he saw it over and over and over again. So if we take this, what he saw to feelings, right? So he saw something and it just didn't seem right. And he saw it again and he saw it again. And then eventually he said, let me go see what this is about. So perhaps it's that way with our feelings, like something's just not right. I hear it, but something's not right. It's that moment where we decide to pay attention to it and turn to it and say, let me go see. And for me, that's when little by little by little, it all began to unravel. And at first it was scary. It was, it was, it was strange. But I remember in 2009, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to follow what I hear inside of me. Because every time I do, it brings me to another level of peace. And I said, even if it totally contradicts everything I know here, I'm going to follow this. And every time I did, it brought me another level of peace and another level of peace and another level of peace to where I am today. I'm at total peace. I have no fear about the scenario. I have total peace. I have total confidence in what I am and what I believe and what I think for myself. I can't be persuaded. I can't be convinced, and I fully respect others for where they are because that's their journey. So to those listening, this is your journey. Your journey has to feel right to you and to you alone.
I like that. Yes. Yeah. There's so much I could just sit down and have a conversation with you, but let's wrap it up for tonight.
Sure.
So what would be your closing words, and then also include where people can find you, because I have a feeling people are going to ask, where do I find Kyle?
What I always like to try to tell people is, again, this is your life and this is your journey. And my biggest hope for you in your life and in your journey is that you just find a place where you feel good about your life and your journey. And it may not make sense to anyone but you. But see, you're the only one that has to live this life and this journey for you. So I hope you find that place if you're not already there. I hope you find that place where it just feels right and good to you. And when you get there, I hope you really begin to sit back and just relax in this place. And I hope that you understand that you are so important. You have such immense value and you matter. And if it starts with you, then eventually it branches out to others. Your people will see it, they will know it, and they will embrace you for who you are. And I don't know if there's anything more beautiful about this journey called life than when we can embrace ourselves for who we are and then start to enjoy the embrace of others for who we are. And I think that's so beautiful. So I just encourage people to just, continue on the journey to find yourself and to love what you find, because you're you and you're only you. And I can be found on Facebook, on Instagram. Now, let me say this. Facebook, you'll find a mixture of things. You'll find some inspirational stuff, some encouraging stuff, but also some deconstructed, think about this, does this make any sense kind of stuff. On Instagram, you'll find only inspirational stuff. So it's Kyle Talks 23 on Instagram. It's Kyle Butler on Facebook. Now, if you venture to TikTok, let me tell you,
there you go.
You're going to find some really strong anti-Christian, anti-religious satire over there. Because that's just an environment where I use it just to, I'm not to convince any Christian who wants to be a Christian, who wants to do the things they do as a Christian. They're not my audience. But it's for those that are starting to ask questions, those who have been asking questions, because there's a reason why there's only, if the world population is 8 billion, only 2 billion are considered Christian. There's a reason for that. So, more people don't believe in it than people do. There's a reason for that. And if that's the case, then it's okay. Then there's a need for people like me to say, hey, listen, you know what? I was there. I'm no longer there. This is how I see it now. Not telling you what to see, not telling you how to feel about it, but perhaps something I say resonates with you. I don't try to convert Christians. So in other words, I'll never go to a church, stand outside that church, hold up my picket signs and say God's not real. I'll never do that. I'll never go to a Christian post and say you're stupid for saying that, and you're dumb, and you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know anything. I would never do that, because you're not my audience. I was there, and when I was there, I was talking to Christians as a Christian. Now I'm no longer there. Now I'm talking to people outside the scope of Christianity that are either, again, questioning their path or starting to perhaps see some things for themselves or hear some things differently. And maybe are looking for a community or a place where they feel like, you know what, I'm not alone, I'm not stupid, I'm not crazy. And they find me and they say, you know what, I'm glad I found you because I had these questions too. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Yes. And that's what I like about you, because even when you were sharing your closing thoughts, I could have cried, but I chucked it back. But what I see about you, Kyle, is you're taking our hands and you're saying, come with me, and together we'll win. And that's so important. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for tonight's interview and
Thank you for having me.
for sharing, because
Let
it's
me
so important.
let me say to you as well, about 3 years ago, when I had hit my darkest dark, and I kind of woke up and looked at my life and thought, wow, what a utter failure, what a utter collapse of everything. I saw no good, no success, nowhere, everywhere I looked, and I knew I needed to talk about it. I just felt instinctively, you need to talk. You need to talk to anyone that's going to be willing to listen. And you're one of those people. We had some conversations, and I was able to share to you at the time practically a perfect stranger. And you listened to me, and there was no judgment. And I when I look back at those healing moments, I remember thanking the universe, I guess, because every single person I spoke to were people like you, who just opened up their ear and their heart and said, hey, I'm not going to judge you. And because I most certainly didn't need judgment. I was already at the lowest point of low.
Right.
I needed to talk, to start to engage the conversation, because little did I know that by opening up what I thought was the big issue really was the minor issue to the other things deep down inside. And that was just a doorway to kind of get all these other things up to the surface. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And
Um,
yeah, good for you. Because I didn't even know that I did that. So,
you did.
and probably you didn't realize when I did that to you, because it was so perplexed, I was just, wow, and again, like you said, the universe kind of gives you those people, your requests are answered, maybe not always like you thought, but
Right.
they're always perfect, because I remember it gave me life, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
yeah, let's do this again.
We
And
will.
yeah, we'll talk soon. Okay.
Thank you. Much love.
Yes. Much love too.